Hello and welcome to our 3 o'clock session, Startup to Enterprise. And we have 4 subject matter experts at our Can Diversity Collective's Ink Beach Live session on Tech Tuesday. We're super excited about these men who are going to just give you all the things that you need to know from a technological perspective. Obviously, I'm not a techie, so I can't even say the word, but we are excited to have Cavel Khan, who's going to lead the conversation and be our moderator. We have Sean Clayton with us, Jeffrey Bowman, and Al Nolan. I'm not going to take up any more time. I just wanted to come in and say hello to you guys and welcome you. I will be back later on in the session to close it out. So Kamal, I'm going to let you take it away and get introductions from these guys.
All right, thank you, Adrian, and welcome everyone. This is the Startup to Enterprise session, and if we were in Cannes, this would be one of those wind down sessions where we all have a bottle of rosé and we're on the beach, get ready to party. But none of that this time around. COVID just messed us up, But we're still gonna get the part of Cannes that's most important, and it's really hearing the insights from all of you. So thank you again for joining the session. I appreciate it. And let's start off quite simple. It is a tough time we're in right now. There's a lot going on, so let's do a quick mental health check-in. We got to make sure everyone is of strong mental health. And just tell us, are you red, yellow, orange, or red? How are you doing during this time? And then after that, just a quick introduction of who you are and your company, and we'll start there.
Well, I'm feeling pretty green right now. I don't have, I got my family. We're all healthy. Things have been okay at the gig. So, we're still doing the best work of our lives at Bottle Rocket. So things have been great. I'm Al Nolan, heavy background in commerce, development. Worked for Michael's stores and Weight Watchers in New York, and ran commerce for memberships at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. So enterprise software is definitely right up my alley. I'm looking forward to having a conversation about moving people from startups into the enterprise space. Looking forward to the talk.
And Sean Clayton here with Sito. Specifically, my background is in location intelligence, using location data, which really isn't a thing right now because everybody's in one location. So kind of changed from there. But adapting some of that technology and some of those data points in order to really kind of understand the holistic view of the customer now. And, not only look at people from online behavior, but offline behavior and how that can tether and move those individuals into really kind of how they transition out of COVID, which is going to be interesting. As far as mental health checks, it seems like it's a Groundhog Day over and over again. You never know what time it is. You look up and it's dark outside, but everybody just seems to keep working, which is a interesting thing. But it's kind of like to Al's point, some of the best work I've ever done right now, which is awesome, just around adapting and being evolutionary and kind of future state with some of the things that are taking place in this very unopportune yet opportune environment.
Hi, and I'm Jeffrey Bowman from Reframe, and I'd say green. And had you talked to me probably 2 months ago, probably a little yellowish, but like everyone else, we had to figure it out in terms of how to make a way. My background, a little bit different. I think tech was a part of my career and started on the brand side with Pepsi, P&G, Miller, Whirlpool, Dell, and Sears. So as tech evolved, I was the guy usually leading an effort inside the company. At Miller Brewing Company, we built the first quote unquote website for our brand. P&G, as an intern, our class developed a business case as to why P&G should be involved in the internet. And then as I moved from Pepsi, P&G, and Miller to Whirlpool, got more into strategic corporate strategy, where we made different decisions in terms of the role of tech. And then when I got to Dell, it just kind of took off from there, where I ran their econometric modeling group. And being in Austin, not a lot of Blacks were coming to South by Southwest at the time, so a bunch of us got together and started a group. One could say the first diversity group within tech. We discovered Blacks in tech. And then from there, went to Ogilvy, And at Ogilvy launched a practice called Ogilvy Culture, which was this idea of total market, but you don't get scale and sustainability unless you have technology and data and addressable data. That uncovered this opportunity where companies knew more about their customers than they did their employees. So I started Reframe to help companies or people leaders build better experiences while people work and live, no matter where they work and live. So that's been kind of like our thesis in terms of future work. And COVID has actually helped accelerate adoption of our technology and thesis.
It's awesome. Thank you all. Just to jump back to you, Jeffrey, with what you were just talking about, you outlined your breadth of experience in the tech space, and myself also. You know, I came into the tech space out of grad school when I got recruited by Microsoft, spent 8 years there, and then went to Twitter for 5 years, and now I'm at Tumblr. You know, my whole way in was from a marketing and an advertising perspective into tech, but then once got to Microsoft, really got to understand the space a lot deeper. You talked about your start. Would love to hear from all of you, but Jeffrey, since you were talking about it, how did you actually break in? Because I imagine there's a lot of folks who are here who may be on the creative side, they may be on the agency side, and we know how tech is in the news every day, and it's such a critical part of what we do. So would love to hear your sort of origin story a little bit deeper.
Yeah, so I'll start from a couple of places. I mean, place number one, you know, we were pretty much at Web 1.0 or 2.0. I started on a Commodore VIC-20. Mom got me a 64, took it apart. But my entry point was through traditional
Dating yourself, brother.
Yeah, I know, crazy, right? Black don't crack.
Yeah, you have to explain that to the millennials and the Gen Zs on the line.
So that really was my entry point, being curious. And I think what was woven in terms of my career was the idea of tech being this other thing. And then as the convergence happened, the space matured, it became just a part of doing business. So it's not separate, it's integrated in everything that we do. And so I think for me, that was kind of like my entry point. Now, what I will say, I was always an entrepreneur, but you know, had to pay the bills, had kids, family, so somewhat of an entrepreneur. And so as I made decisions in terms of budgets that I owned and stuff that I procured, saw that there was a pretty big gap in terms of the space. And then obviously with meetups started happening, it became somewhat organic. People started going different places. But I think for me, this was like my third startup while working my day job, okay? First, it was an Amazon-like product. Second was a lead aggregator for people in their 3PL. And then obviously landed with Reframe where I am today. And I think, you know, just being engaged with it, you know, it's an ecosystem. And so if you're not in that ecosystem, get into that ecosystem, figure out how it's different, and figure out where your value is placed as it relates to that intersection. And then that's where, you know, you create something. And I think for me, it took me 30 years to get here, but there was always this opportunity of, you know, why are not companies able to shift and change at the speed of culture and at the speed of tech?
Right.
And so we filled that void by consumerizing the workplace. And so that's how we got into it as a whole.
That's awesome. Great story to hear. Al, would love to hear your origin story and how did you get into the technology space?
You know, speaking of a Commodore 64, my sister had one, and it would always be around. I never knew what it was. It was like, I guess, a whole computer in one with the keyboard or something like that. I never got to use it, but my sister introduced me to development. She was a whiz, early Java and C++ developer. But I picked up the bug maybe senior year of high school with web design. Moved all the way up to head of development for Michael's Stores, from Michaels.com. Then kind of tired with retail brands in general. And then a really interesting role opened up in Weight Watchers in New York. And essentially they wanted to start selling memberships online. And they'd never done that before. So I had up an effort to make sure that Weight Watchers was able to sell memberships online. I think they're still transacting to this day with our architecture. then I kind of got a big head and left. Got this huge bonus, and I said, you know what? It's time for me to strike out on my own. I've made all these companies, tens of millions of dollars. It's time for me to build a startup. And I built a company called Notarize. I got an office in Dumbo, and it was swank, and I had a place in Brooklyn. I thought I was the bee's knees. So guess what? Ran out of cash. It was a free product. NYU students were using it. And it had some traction. It was a way for people to take better notes and have a better relationship with the notes that they took. But Evernote was out there, and it was a little overwhelming, to be totally honest. And then I got a call from the Museum of Modern Art, and they heard about what I'd done with Weight Watchers and getting their memberships off the ground. Because I spoke on a lot of panels in New York. And then, Museum of Modern Art said, hey, if you come over here, you can help us re-engineer and re-architect how we sell memberships online. So now, if you go to MoMA and you buy a membership online, that's our principal architecture that you'll be using. So had a great time with that. And then Bottle Rocket and Dallas gave me a call, and it was a company that I'd always admired. They built so many mobile apps over the years. At Michael's, I tried to win a bunch of work for Bottle Rocket to take on our mobile app. We just couldn't get a deal done. So for them to reach out and give me a call back in late 2018, I just thought it was an opportunity of a lifetime. We had talks, and I loved the place, loved the environment, loved the developers, some of the smartest people I've ever worked with at large. And I've had the time of my life ever since. I've been able to work with startups, invest in startups since I got there. And the company is very, very open to making sure that there's advancements spread across all cultures. So we're doing a really good job right now of communicating that message and helping people where we can. So it's been a great ride so far.
Awesome. And Sean, you're more on the strategy side. How did you get your start in technology?
Yeah, so for me, I'm a client first kind of guy at the end of the day, and so started more on the revenue side around sales and whatnot. And as I was working with different technology and products, as I got more into the media landscape and the ad tech and the MarTech space, I noticed that some of the things I was selling were broken, and I'm like, okay, well, this isn't good for the clients that I'm bringing on board, especially when they're entrusting me as a sales individual to actually enable their jobs to become more functional, and they're putting literally every dollar that they spend puts their job at risk in some capacity. So
right.
If within that space, things aren't working and I can see that they're not working, but I don't understand why they're not, then of course for me, Google's a hell of a thing. You start Googling, everything you possibly can to figure out how to fix it. And that leads you down these rabbit holes, and you say, okay, well, maybe there's something wrong with the tech or the code, or then I taught myself SQL. I taught myself all these other things to then be able to have a conversation with my CTOs or, any of the development teams as to why this wouldn't work or why that wouldn't work. So what it's allowed me to do, you wouldn't want to stand up my code in an enterprise platform at all, but it allowed me to actually understand the relationship between the business side of things and the tech side of things, and how to communicate efficiently between both sides in order to figure out where true strategy can align. And then through that alignment, you have what I would consider a lot of areas around data opportunities. And so that took me off on this whole other path where I created a term that inside of our company, I think it's getting a little bit more outside of it, called data artistry. It drives data science. So scientists nuts because they're like, okay, it's not an art, it's science. But data artistry to me is that application of taking that one thing that you couldn't find, within the data landscape and tethering it in a way that allows you to find a whole new solution. So I'll give you an example. We did a lot in entertainment, which allowed us to spur up a new division inside of Sito called our entertainment division, where we were trying to identify theatrical moviegoers. And in that theatrical moviegoer space, nobody wants to share information. Your exhibitors don't want to share information. The studios don't have the information that they want. On the other side of it, the Fandangos of the world don't want to bridge that information with anybody else, and they're getting a small percentage of the pie. So he said, okay, well, you've got all this location intelligence. You have these SDKs that are running in the background. They're pinging people's locations in some capacity, maybe not at a full density, but it's more than 20% of the population. Then at which point, if you take what I would consider a theatrical fingerprint and said, hey, I understand when somebody goes in, here's a timestamp, and they're basically, staggering the show times for crowd control inside of a movie theater. Well, you can kind of figure out, like, if somebody got here at this time, left at Y time, here's the movie that they saw, especially if they're clustered in a small environment. So through that application, now all of a sudden I have a theatrical data set that's tied to the movie they saw, and I can go forward and backward in time as long as I actually have the movie start times and end times across those different locations. And then you bring that to a studio saying, oh, I never knew that I didn't know these things. And then you parcel that out to figure out other applications, build out different segmentation analysis. And through that application, all of a sudden, that took a whole new division of our company down the road. And I consider that data artistry because people weren't thinking of it in that capacity. And there's a lot of different ways that you can cut many other aspects of data to then figure out where that silver lining lies in order to create real business applications to drive better results. And that's where, I'll sit between the tech side, the data side, the media side, and even some of the creative side in order to make that come to life.
Awesome. No, the difference in the dynamic of how you all got into the industry is really interesting, and it shows that there's multiple paths into tech, and tech has been booming for a long time, and is an incredible wealth creator for so many people. This is the diversity initiative, can. So, talk to me about how the landscape is changing, particularly for startups or mid-stage companies, and particularly for those owned by people of color. What are some of the things that you all are seeing in the space right now with everything that's happening with COVID?
One of the things I saw recently, Bottle Rocket, we specialize in building mobile apps and mobile experiences. One of the things that we're seeing a lot more requests for is this more contactless future where it's like a touchless tomorrow, right? A lot of talk around app clips, a lot of talk, that's iOS's new answer to a lot of these in-context mobile experiences. A lot of talk around return to work software and places and ways for people to understand the environments they're about to walk into and make an assessment about whether or not they should go. And giving people that type of confidence actually helps to get the economy moving again. So we're experiencing a lot of contactless requests in our space. So I'm curious to see what you guys are experiencing as well.
Yeah, I'll kind of give you like a pre-COVID and then now that we're in COVID. I think pre-COVID, when we started in 2015, a lot of the work that we were doing was more on the service side in terms of building employee experience and engagement plans. Saw a pretty wide gaping hole in terms of, a lot of the folks that were in tech in the future workspace were building a lot of apps. So bottoms up. Think about Slack. They would come in, they would infest the organization, and the CIO, CTO says, what the heck is that? So I think a lot of people that were initially coming into that space were building software enterprise that what we call one application in terms of solution. But what we heard from CTO, CIOs is that we don't want to have to pay a license fee for ERP to bundle it up and pull it out in terms of the data on the back end. We need something much more integrated, more than one feature, multiple features, so we're not having to buy. So we designed our software, took all of 2019, rather than launch, because of COVID, rather than launching it as a solo, we actually partnered with a company, it's a channel partner, HNS. They have a footprint on the comm side, public relations, and people would say, well, why are you partnering with them? I think the thing that we saw, and I will encourage a lot of folks that are Black and brown, we do a lot of stuff with creative content on the consumer side. That's a wide gaping hole on the B2B side in terms of B2B content creation. And so that's the thing I think as we think post-COVID for the creators. You look at D Nice in terms of what he did. That was content creation. But at the end of the day, now all of these employees are sitting at home. It was already a problem when they were in the four walls in terms of content, but now that they're, so we started getting calls like, hey, do you have a content library that's B2B focused? Absolutely, we pulled it off the shelf, but it was hosted on our platform now. And we had to move at the speed of change. March, we were planning to launch in May. We didn't have a video conferencing, a Zoom-like feature. We got our engineers together. We built one. And it really helped us land a channel partner with HMS to now go after enterprise in a much more accelerated way. So I would say post-COVID, if you're not thinking about partnering, the time is now. Don't try and do it alone. Partner with someone that already has a footprint and make it happen. So,
Sean, anything to add to that?
So I'm a bit of a different animal, less of building, products and more around, data applications. So in the location data space, of course, pre-COVID, everybody wants to know, what retailers people are going to, how those things apply. Of course, as you see different industries decimated by, the cloistering effect of people having to stay at home and getting away from that contact. It's affected media spends, of course. It's affected, really, you've seen a consolidation between like Foursquare and Factual and those guys coming together. The location companies and different media companies are starting to acquire each other just because, in essence, it doesn't make sense for them to live separately. On my end, one of the things that, we really started to focus on is how do you create more of a brand coherence or a brand alignment using the data that you can identify in this cloistered environment, because content consumption is at an all-time high, whether you're in the business space, whether you're in the media space, whether you're on the consumer side, whatever it is. So, you saw Netflix, skyrocket. You saw everybody just go nuts with trying to, stream things. I mean, I think I've watched more movies than I care to watch, just because you try to fill in the times and the gaps, or you're reading books and, where you're reading those. So all that data now becomes very rampant in that online behavior. And then being able to contextualize certain aspects around what people are engaging with in a way that tethers them back to their historical trends of how they moved in time and space from a location perspective really starts to tell a story around identifying the holistic view of a consumer, right? And now everybody has a footprint that's a little bit more dense based on that. Now it's what you do with it. And so in that space, the business applications of it are huge. I just don't think that everybody's looking at it through that lens. And for me, where I think businesses have the biggest opportunity in order to leverage tech is to build now. It's less about getting out to market and more about building a culture of data and infrastructure and technology that allows you to accelerate your growth post-COVID. And that's really where we as a company have transitioned from being a media location-based tech player to really starting to re-ideate a different way to apply ourselves to real business solutions in a time where, media dollars just aren't as fluent.
That's interesting to hear. And all three of you come from different perspectives in terms of how you're currently helping brands and your customers during this time. I wonder, as you sort of peek around the corner, you all are on the bleeding edge of what's next. Marketers are still in this question mark phase, right? Some of them are moving out of it, but they're not quite sure, should they be investing more in technology? Should they be pulling back and sticking with what they know? What guidance would you give them from the different perspectives that you all bring from the insights piece, from the technology and building, and from the capabilities and the partnerships that you have on your side, Jeffrey? So anyone can take this, and would love to hear your thoughts there.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I mean, look, we know the elephant in the room is COVID and Black Lives Matter. The thing that I'll say, not only is this a moment for brands to think about, how you build an inclusive culture, but how do you do it at scale and how do you do it that's sustainable? So, obviously we saw the evolution of what happened with regards to, hey, we're going to, issue the statement. Hey, we're going to, rely on these 8 people that are of color in our company for a 50,000 employee organization. Not going to happen. And so you saw a lot of pushback from the folks that are in the workforce. And I think the thing that companies are overlooking is, how do I find partners who know how to solve for this problem, but in a very modern way? So when you think about, if I was a marketer, if you said, hey, I've got a persona of a person, I got the data, and it only includes race, identity, age, gender, as well as, how many kids and household income. I would say that's it. That's all you got. So when you think about this idea of, culture within the workplace and transformation, you got to get at a level the same way that you would get a level of knowing and personalization of knowing your customers. And so that's how we were able to address the problem. And I would say for marketers, and lean inward, not outward, because at the end of the day, your employees have to know this new America, this new majority. It's not just a commercial opportunity. The way that you're going to sustain this growth that you so desire is using a tech-enabled approach that's scalable and that's personable, so that you can give them the training and the education that they need, so that post-COVID, it's not just a thing. It's not going away, because Black and Brown is going to increase even more at an accelerated pace. And if you look, think, act, and do pre-COVID the way post-COVID, you miss a huge and significant opportunity.
Yeah, I agree with that. Sean, Al, you want to add into that?
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Al.
Well, kind of one of the things I was thinking about, COVID kind of slowed things down, and then there was this insurgence of them now seeing us in a way. So this Black Lives Matter movement really started training and teaching people how to see us in a different way. What I'd love to see moving forward with this new touchless reality is more African Americans, more diverse leadership. That's what we haven't seen yet. We've seen hiring pipelines expand to include us. We've seen more recruiting. Yeah, we went to Howard to see if we could grab some people and that type of thing. But it was from a delivery perspective for people that were individual contributors, but not from a leadership perspective. We don't know what it looks like at critical mass for us to be in leadership positions across the board. One of the things that I think it's silly, but it's the one way I can describe it. If you're pouring soda into a cup and it starts to fizz up, you slow down, let the fizz drop, then you pour again. What we saw is they poured a little soda by starting to hire us, and things started to fizz, so they chilled out a little bit, and they thought things were going to get rampant. They thought that they weren't going to get their own jobs. They didn't have or have the vision to see what critical mass looks like for us to get all the way to the top and truly start to perform, truly get our ideas out there, and have a workplace that is diverse and inclusive. What we haven't seen yet is, yeah, we get a seat at the table. Sometimes we're asked for our opinion. I always butt in and give mine anyway. But what we haven't seen what that looks like when it's several of us at the table and everyone's comfortable to say whatever they need to. We haven't gotten that level of our voice yet. That's what I want to see moving forward, because we're about to move into a reality that nobody's seen before. And just like in 2008, when Barack Obama took over as president, it was a reality nobody had seen before. They gave him the reins. We did all right. I think this is one of those situations where it's an unconventional problem. Let's get some unconventional leadership to the table. And leadership will show you how to hire us. We'll show you how to maintain us. We'll show you how to keep us happy. You haven't done that good a job of doing it. Let us take the reins. That's what I'd like to see moving forward.
Well, yeah, now I think to echo on what you're saying, it's interesting. I feel like, as Black people, and I'm just going to put it out there, we have had to brute force our way by working so hard in order to get to a level playing field, that the acceleration that's behind the hard work puts us in this unicorn type of position, to where there's so many interesting things that we can do if just the doors would be open just a crack.
Yep.
And the few times that they are opened up, it's not saying that we're any more talented. It's just the amount of work and the amount of iteration, the amount of repetition that we have to put in just to be at the same level playing field. It gives us a different edge in some capacity that we have not been allowed to. People have not allowed us to. We haven't experienced it, and they haven't experienced it on our behalf. And it's when you have the ability to run fast, and they open up those lanes to do it without having every single blocker and hurdle and everything else along those lines in front of us. It's almost like when you allowed Jesse Owens to run in the Olympics. You allowed Jackie Robinson to play baseball. all of a sudden it's this amazing effect that takes place just because the oppression creates so much strength. That's through that strength, there's a lot of greatness that comes out of it. And then we're able to not only make other individuals around us better, but also pull those, other people who look like us up into a space to where, they believe that there's something possible. And I do believe that the onus is on our counterparts in order to make those opportunities available so that we have the opportunity to shine. And not only, it's not in a way that's going to take jobs away, it's going to create more opportunities, if anything else.
Yeah.
I mean, I say this in a funny way, but Trump never would have been president if Obama hadn't showed up. Now, that doesn't mean that he's a great president, because we all know that he's not. But he never would have had that kind of a seat at the table had that other aspect of things taken place. Now, there's an effect that now is going to happen to where there's a balancing playing field where we've seen one end of the spectrum and the other end of the spectrum. And I think great things start to happen with a level of parity on both sides that we're now running away from the alternative in order to create a more seamless and integrated culture, which I'm excited to see.
Can I just add a little bit of tension, right? We've all been agreeing and having fun. So here's what my hope is, and Al, I'm going to disagree with you just a little bit.
Sure.
So here's how I'll frame it up. We're probably Gen 3 or 4 post-civil rights. If you were in the workforce between 1970 and 80, you're Gen 1 post-civil rights. You probably, for the first time, went to integrated high school. You came into the workforce, probably the first of many, attended the university, and you were probably one of the first blacks to hire in terms of corporation. 80 to 90, Gen 2, 90 to 2000, Gen 3. I'm tired of talking about acquisition strategy. You need to learn how to keep us, because we've had 3 generations in the workforce post-civil rights. Focus on retaining the talent that's already set and ready to go. We've got less CEOs than we had in the 80s and 90s. So, I'm not going to reset the bar for you so you can focus on acquisition when you got 3 generations of people that are qualified, able. I'm not going to do that for you. You're going to use the same tactics. You're going to go to the same HBCUs. It's going to take those same Gen Zs and millennials 20 plus years to get into senior leadership. You've got the ELC, you've got the Urban League, you've got more than enough resources to elevate. I don't want to hear anything about acquiring. I want to hear about elevate. That's talent that you currently have, and stop picking the same old blacks that you see everywhere. There are a lot of talented people that are in the workforce that are capable and qualified, or at that tipping point of VP, and they can't break through that glass ceiling. Let's pull those people up and stop resetting the bar so that you can say you're going to give yourself another 10 years to get them in the pipeline so that they can be promoted.
Absolutely. I agree totally. And if it came off.
No, we're good. I just want some energy, man.
The thinking there, and I love where you're headed. Love Malone started a company called The Gradient. She spoke early yesterday.
Yeah.
Lincoln Stevens, he's working on something, monumental with locomotives. A lot of it was born of a bunch of directors that were highly performant, doing really good work under senior directors or VPs, and they went on to advance. And that talent that actually fueled that success ended up stagnant. Then they had to go to another agency, lateral move, didn't get the promotion, or they had to start their own piece. Really a step back, right? Because the revenue and opportunity isn't there. You got to build your book of business all over again.
Right.
Totally agree. I think advancement is definitely the next move. In fact, initiatives like that are already in place to make sure that the talent is seen, A, and it's about the performance, or it's about the work, B. I love what the Gradient and locomotives are about to start doing to the industry. It's shining a light on already current performant talent that you have right now. And you're right, you don't need to spend big acquisition dollars going to Howard and all these other places. You've got talent right in the ranks right now. You've got new divisions that you want to start. You've got new groups that you want headed up by new talent. Now's your chance to make a stand and put some action, where your mouth is. Hire. It's time to promote from within, and we've already got all of the skills in the world. It's time for us to start having them seen in prime time.
And
so I like this conversation because what I'm hearing, I heard a couple of things from all of you. One, Jeffrey, you made the point about acquisition. Like, we're not going back to just acquisition. I think we still need to continue to acquire because there's still just not enough numbers, but it is about elevating the team. And Sean made a point earlier when he said, like, once you give us that crack and that space to perform, people really outshine. And one of the things that's happening now, especially when you talk about Gen Z and millennials, is and I love it, they're not waiting.
No.
Waiting. And so this session is about startups, the enterprise, and tech. And everyone realized that the one area in this industry that is probably the most, and I don't know this factually, but just from being in the industry, the most underrepresented by us is tech and startups and the VC space and that whole space. So, as you all have been in a number of different companies, I'm seeing the behavior where people say we're not waiting anymore, and COVID has been an accelerant for that. It has given people time to step back and say, the world is changing, opportunities are changing. We were already in the gig economy. How can I go build for myself? Especially now, as you said, Al, we are being seen, our talent's being seen, and what's coming along with that, at least verbally in the press, is that more and more, people of color are going to be funded and being given an opportunity to build more. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on that, because it's kind of, I'm hearing a lot of the conversation go in different directions, but that's what I'm hearing when I talk to people, that they're going to go build it. They're not waiting anymore. And if the dollars are there to build it, then, as Sean said, once we get that crack in the door, we're going to see things start to take off.
I love Jeffrey's point about no longer waiting. Millennials now, and I hate even calling them that, it's so icky when I got to say it out loud, but they don't wait. The memes that I see are, half joke and half reality. These young men and women are not waiting. They are marching. They are vocal in meetings. They are visible. They're incredibly valuable in those conversations, and they're very learned. This is exactly the type of revolution that I'd love to see. We can open those doors. A lot of us are in, senior leadership positions, so we keep our own eyes open, and we'll find that talent. It's there. I got to give major props to these millennials. They're incredibly valuable from what I'm seeing. Entitled, but certainly valuable. And certainly talented.
You just lost half the audience when you said that.
They know the deal.
I'll add a couple of things, and it sounds like so I think what's different about this moment is that you have, because of tech, you have transparency. There's a playbook floating around, the calls that we've gotten from some of the companies, like, hey, what do I do? We released a statement, gave a little money away, and there was no there. Like, what's our plan next? Because we're going to get outed, because the ERGs, whomever, has a manifesto, they posted it, and they're holding us accountable. So that's where tech is for good. Some would argue for bad, but we didn't have that, Gen 2, Gen 3 post over rice. Now we do. And I'll bounce back to you with regards to tech. One of the things that I hope, and we had to be, when we started Reframe, because of pre-2000 and, from 2000 to 2010, there was not a lot of capital, to start a business. When we went to a different city, we landed in Kinko's and we went to Starbucks. There was no rework, right? There was no, capital to infuse. It was debt capital. And then you got a PO to float you. And so what I hope happens, yes, Gold Star, you raise a mill, but do you really have a business? Like, do you manage a P&L? Do you have customers paying? And so I think what COVID has forced, just like 2000 did, they're the pretenders and they're the real businesses out there. And so what I hope comes out of COVID is that the real businesses rise to the tops and the pretenders floats to the bottom. I think you need a correction. There's a lot of hype as it relates to people that start businesses. And so when we think about, what is the good that can come out of it, is that you actually have real P&Ls with businesses. The people get funded that really need to accelerate because they're actually solving a problem versus just looking for an exit strategy.
Sean, I think you're trying to say something, but we can't hear you.
I can't hear you yet.
Need a headphone. I think you need the headphones in.
Oh.
So while Sean gets set up, interesting point you're making there, Jeffrey, about people, have they handled a P&L? Do they actually have a business? You all have had incredible journeys, as you talked about earlier, and you've been at the startup stage, and you've also been at the enterprise stage. So what is that journey like? And for those who are getting this moment and this opportunity now, what things would you tell them to think about as they are at startup stage, or even for those who are getting that acceleration, that seed stage and moving up to their Series A, Series B, hopefully? What's the guidance that you all would give them? Because you've seen organizations in these different stages.
Sure. One thing I'll say, and I'll just throw a softball out there to get things going. Kawhi Leonard, he had a championship last year, and it was unexpected. He was with Toronto, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
They weren't supposed to win. Nobody was quite worried about them. They advanced. They did very well. He became a champion. Why does that matter? No one expected him to win, and no one was expecting any success. But they knew he'd do well, but they weren't expecting that. With LeBron, year after year after year, we expect so much, and he delivers so much. So I think the difference between startups and enterprises are expectations, stakeholders, employees now on payroll. Your software has to mean more. It has to have longer tails. Analytics mean more. So more is expected at that stage, and you're no longer surprising people. In fact, your stakeholders are demanding 1-2% rises in profits, not just revenue, every quarter. So the demands increased. Whereas with startups, you're giving credit for just existing, right? You're giving credit for just arriving, making payroll every month. Even if you don't make payroll, if the site's still up, that's the measure and that's the metric. In enterprise, the stakes are higher, and that's the major difference in build versus buy analyses, service blueprints. These are things that you do at the enterprise level, whereas at startups, things are scrappy. Everybody's wearing multiple hats, and it's forgiving. I think that's one of the major differences.
Sean, are you back with us? It doesn't look that way.
I'll jump in. So let's say check number one comes in the door. You want to do enterprise, know that it's going to be 6 to 8 month sales cycle. So how do you get working capital? You need working capital because you got to pay your employees, because the average check is net 90 or 120 days. Check number two, make sure you go and get a line of credit before you go out and start raising, because immediately I've seen people that immediately want to start raising capital when they've got 2 customers. And then check number three, find a partner. It's enterprise. More than enough money out there. You're trying to make sure that you deliver in terms of what you promised. We were very fortunate out of COVID to find a partner like H&S on the PR and content side and activation. Those were gaps that we'd had. Not enough people knew about us. We had over 20 engagements from 15 to 2019, but we were not show ready to scale. And by finding that partner, now we're show ready to scale. Keep your nose down. Don't be so quick to bring in venture money when you've got other sources out there like paying customers.
Got it. Sean, quick check. Are you back with us?
I think I'm back with you. Am I back with you?
All right. I got you. So we were just talking about, in this time and with all the opportunity that is there, what advice would you give to, folks who are striking out, wherever they may be at the startup phase, or maybe they're at the, much further along in the enterprise phase? What things should they be thinking about to make sure they're maximizing this opportunity?
I mean, I think the big things for me around maximizing the opportunity are around, one, making sure that you have an alignment with brand advocacy, not only externally, but internally. So in essence, if you're thinking about, a lot of people forget about like internal communications and how they're positioning themselves internally. Yeah. And if you don't have that rampant advocacy from an internal perspective, everything falls apart. And everybody tends to chase the shiny new object in the room. And that's why I think the startup world is so appealing. But then on the other side of it, you can still create that same type of culture with those quick iterations and quick turn cycles and more of an enterprise environment as well. But it really starts with that internal brand advocacy, which then can also translate to that external brand advocacy as you take things out to market, because the voice internally speaks externally as well. And many companies, even in their infancy stages, forget about that because they say, okay, we just need to get this one thing done. They get over that, they get over the top of that hill, and there's an entire mountain in front of them. But they feel like that hill was enough of a conquest to, ring the register, and now they got some funding and a few other things happen. But it doesn't allow you to bridge yourself from that startup phase to that enterprise phase. And looking at things more holistically allows you to take it down that path instead of just continuing to forget that there's a longer journey. And it's even less about the exit, because people think about the exit, which is a destination, but it's not the journey. So I think if people understand what that whole journey looks like and how that ties back into the advocacy side of things, you'll really start to move the needle in a different way, especially around our entitled millennials, right, Al?
Oh, absolutely. And it's always that thing.
Oh, stop it.
I love it.
You're not getting my Twitter blown up off that one. I love millennials. I love them.
I love them.
They're driving the car right now, and I love it.
They are driving the car.
As Dave Chappelle said.
But you know what? We got to pave the way for them. And a lot of times they look at us with contempt if we haven't opened those doors. We look like blockers. So one of the things that I've tried to make it my business to do is to open as many doors for as many young folks as possible, because I know when I was coming up, I wanted to look upon VPs and and other people of color that were in leadership positions and say, hey, like, what do we got? Like, what do you got for me? And they had been invited to the table, but they weren't truly being included, so they didn't quite have hiring power. They didn't quite have the power of purse to open up a budget to invite me to play. So that was one of the things that I vowed to make sure that I had available, to make sure I could hire 2, 5, 10. I hire pretty regularly, in a lot of things that I do. So I try to make sure those doors are wide open so millennials know they've got a friend in the generation before them.
That's a great segue, Alan. It's actually the next question I was going to ask is, you all are very senior, and Jeff, in your case, you've been in the startup space for a long time and doing quite well with Reframe. What are you doing, or what do you think is your accountability right now to make sure that in this moment we are opening those doors or helping those in the generation? Like really specific, because I think there's people who, I think, Sean, as you said, people have done a couple of things, but they don't know what to do next. So like, what are some tangible takeaways, specific things that you're finding success doing either inside your organization or working with partners?
Yeah, I think 2 things. Well, 3. 1, stay in business. That's number 1 and core, and I don't say that jokingly. Obviously, you can learn from the past experiences, but when you actually have a business, you can actually hire people, and those people then either decide to stay in the nest or fly away. And the reason I made that statement is because that's how I got my first channel partner. Someone that worked at Reframe, got a lot of the learnings. We were transitioning from services to software. They went to H&S. Moment happened, who are you going to call? Reframe. And so that was how we brokered our relationship with one of our partners. So stay in business, bring people, develop them. And obviously there are going to be cases where you're going to have some hardship. Be honest with your people. Hey, we're about to go through a rough patch. We're going to make it through. But also know that when you bring people into your organization, it's important for you to be honest with them and state that there are risks involved. Yeah. This is not a daily paycheck. You may miss the 15th, but I'll get you on the 30th. Depends on when the check comes in. This is not easy, and it's not for everybody. So stay in business, be honest, develop your people as much as you can, give them flexibility. If they want a second job, if they have their own startup, allow them to do that, because they're not like your father and they're not like your grandfather when they were in the workforce. That's the first thing. Stay in business, be honest, develop them so that they grow and to become something else that they may have not been able to manifest within your organization. The thing that I've started doing, peeking my head up just a little bit, I'm partnering, like say, WeWork Lab Small Business. I'm hosting Ask Me Anythings to talk about and share the journey that we've had. It's going to be ups and downs. You may not make it through the valley of death. So there are a lot of people out there that are going through those same cycles as you are. Share your story, no matter how bad, how good it is, and hopefully you can pass something on for the next person so that they can learn from it. Those are the two things that I really focus on. Stay in business, share your experiences, and the rest will solve itself.
Awesome. Sean, anything you want to add in?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, on my end, and kind of to echo some of the things Jeffrey said, the internal communication is huge. I think oftentimes that's forgotten about. How you communicate, how you position the different levels of communication to individuals is extremely key. And in the startup world, you're running so fast that people forget that that's a thing. And even if you have to go to the process of investing in a partner or an agency or somebody to help you with those communications, it's worth the investment, because oftentimes I see, especially in the Gen Zs, the millennials and whatnot, if they don't have a direction and they don't feel that, they'll just disband and that foundation starts to fall apart. Other areas is, build a culture of data. No matter what you are, at the end of the day, if you don't have a culture of data that seeds underneath you, then in essence, you really have nothing at the end of the day. You're going to have flower shops that are going to outperform other flower shops because they understand their consumers better than the flower shop that doesn't, right? And that's like, a small use case. And then as you start to get bigger or you want to sell the business, the data is everything that you have at the end of the day. So if those things are forgotten about and not positioned well, then it becomes a really big problem. And you can't really move into the future. So those are probably my two largest takeaways, or that I would recommend of positioning, how somebody accelerates from that startup world into any aspect of enterprise or just staying alive and staying in business.
Yeah, one of the things that I'll just jump in a little bit as we talk about right now and how do we help out. I've been very focused on just a quick thing, job descriptions, and making sure that in the job description, one of the things that I am calling out, because I'm hiring a lot of leaders right now, is the ability to hire and develop diverse talent. Like I want to see that as a demonstrated skill to ensure that when those leaders are in place, the teams that they're building out is reflective of the go forward that we want to see, and the fact that we're in this moment where we're recognizing that in the tech space there isn't enough diversity, and there's so much value that diverse talent can bring to the table. So that's something that I'm seeing a lot of traction with, and even it helps you with candidates, because the right candidates will notice that and they will value it. So just wanted to add that as part of the conversation. I think we're coming up on 5 minutes. I'm going to do a couple of last round questions. One of them, all of us on this call are men, and we know the challenges that we face as Black men, but Black women also are facing particular challenges in this space, in the technology space. And even though they are the fastest growing entrepreneurs, would love to hear, from an ally perspective or from what you've seen, what kind of challenges do you see Black women particularly facing, and how can we be supportive of them and what they're trying to do?
Well, one of the things I've seen in the last couple of years, I've had a couple of women clients that are very tenacious and they know their stuff very well. One of the things I've been trying to be helpful about is this product management language, to make sure that they not understand, because they usually understand everything you throw at them, but just make sure that it's accounted for when they're building software. Again, my background is software development, so that's been a lot of my contact with women founders. And what I've noticed, just in general, right, with everyone that asks for software to be developed, that product management thinking, product thinking, design thinking, service blueprint oriented creation of products absolutely has so much value, and it puts you a cut above of your competition. So that's one of the things that I've been instilling in every woman founder that I've seen, just to add that language system. They're incredibly capable. Haven't seen any gaps in that regard. I've just been making sure that when I do come in contact, and I'm letting them know this is how product is run, add this to your tool chest, and you'll go leaps and bounds.
Jeffrey or Sean, anything you want to add in?
Yeah, look, I'm not one to miss this. I think Black women are probably doing better than Black men in tech, at least from my interactions. I think the allyship is to partner with them. And from a fundraising perspective, I've just seen more women raising more money than Black men. And so I think more than anything, how can I learn from you? They're moving the ball faster. And I'm just going to be quite honest and frank with you. I think for Black men, oftentimes it's the ego. Walking into a room thinking that you are the subject matter experts. When you look at Angela Benton, she just raised $1 million over the last 2 days. There's a couple other founders, Popcorn. So I think they're winning. I think we just should amplify that. And I also think let's be in the room together. There's no reason that we have to be separate from women and men. And so that's how I'm trying to build collaborations and partnerships with Black women.
Yeah, awesome. And I mean, the only thing I would echo is that there's always a good collaboration in the way that a woman's mind works and a man's mind works at the end of the day, and we couldn't do it without him. And so for me, I'm always looking for opportunities, to where you can get that. We have that linear thought process, and they have that, I don't even know what to call it because I still haven't figured it out. At 41, but they definitely
better is a good word.
Yeah, than we do. And so for me, it's just in this ad tech martech world that I'm in, I don't really encounter as many as I would like to. So just it would be great to have more Black women in that space. In the marketing side, I see it a lot more, but in that tech, ad tech, martech space, it's pretty light on my side. So I would just love to have more interaction and to see what that would look like, because I think it would accelerate the opportunities, especially around what we're capable of.
Got it. Great. And then last question, because we're coming right up on time. What's that? And you guys have shared such amazing lessons, and thank you for the time. What's that earned lesson? What's that earned secret? You all have been in this space a long time. That is a thing that you always keep with you, that you remember, that you'd want to pass on to those who are watching.
Wow. Embarrassment is, if you can turn embarrassment into the steak that you eat and really, really enjoy eating, then you can probably go pretty far. Stamina and courage has gotten me very far. And when I'm not afraid to be embarrassed, I make the best moves in my career. I make the best decisions. I choose the best, life partners. You've got to have courage, and you've got to have stamina. Those are two of the things that I've definitely cut my teeth on. So you cannot be afraid to be embarrassed, because at the end of the day, it's not the worst thing in the world. And that keeps a lot of people from making decisions, pulling triggers, asking questions, walking across the room to shake somebody's hand. And usually that's the one human thing that you need to do to get to the other side. So stamina and courage are the two things that have gotten me where I am and hopefully propel me forward.
I'd say don't quit, make a way, and revenue hides a lot of things.
Sean? Oh man, Sean, you cut. I think you muted, or you're cut out of it.
Know your internal motivation at the end of the day. If you could stay true to that, then you'll go far. And try not to make it money. Even though money moves things, try to find something deeper than that.
Awesome. Well, appreciate the time, gentlemen. Thank you so much. I hope those who are watching enjoy, and I guess we're going to be winding down and sipping some rosé, in a little bit. So we can still have that. There you go, Jeff.
Jeff had his ready. You guys, thank you. This was such a great conversation. The last part got really interesting. I started leaning into my computer to hear everything you guys had to say about, what made women special and how you can be more supportive. And I definitely appreciate all of that. I took it as if you were all talking to me personally of how you could. So thank you, Jeffrey, Sean, Al, Cavel. You guys did such an amazing job. I'm sure the chat was on fire and people learned so much from you, and we'll be inboxing you, I'm sure, direct messaging you. So hopefully you will join us in 2021. This is like an open invitation to join us in Cannes next year, because we will be in the south of France. I'm claiming that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Here, a follow-up to where you guys are from today till, you know, our post-COVID time. So thank you again, everyone. We have a session coming up at 5:30. Hopefully you will join us. It's from our sponsor, our Spartan team, and we're so grateful to have them as sponsors this year for our virtual summit. Hopefully you have enjoyed this session from Startup to Enterprise from the Can Diversity Collective's Inkwell Beach Live on Tech Tuesday. So, all right, we'll see you guys soon. Thank you so much for joining us, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.